here we go. This is Unit 13, Day 1, Honors Algebra 2 class. As you can see, we're going to do systems of equations. The objective is to find the solution. Now, sometimes you're going to find out that we might have multiple solutions, okay? So we're going to do this two ways. We're going to solve by graphing and we're going to solve by substitution. Now, you did this in Algebra 1, but what do you remember from Algebra 1? So here's what you did in Algebra 1. We have two lines, two linears, and they intersect. So the one on the left here, you can see they intersect at the point -2, 3. So we have one solution. The one on the right, we got two lines. They intersect at the point 4, 4. So again, we have one solution. Okay, so again, you did this in Algebra 1, so hopefully it's just a quick review. All right, so here's a couple more. So this one, as you can see on the left, we have two lines that don't meet. They are parallel. So that means we have no solution. It wasn't meant to be for them to meet. The one on the right, we have two lines. I don't know how well you can see this, but they're right on top of each other. Okay, so when you graph the two lines, they end up being the same line. So we have infinitely many solutions. Okay, so they can meet here, 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 here multiple times. So there's infinitely many solutions. So that's what you did in Algebra 1. Now in Algebra 2, we have quadratics come into play. So here we have a linear, a line, and a quadratic. Okay, so as you can see, they intersect at two different spots. -4, 0, and then 1, 5. Okay, so we have two solutions. So here again, we have a linear and a quadratic. They intersect at two spots, -4, 2, which is this point here, and then 6, -2 is this point here. So again, we have two solutions. Okay? All right. We could also have a quadratic with a quadratic. So they meet two different times. We got here, -5, 3, and -2, 1, so two solutions. The one on the right, quadratic, quadratic. Again, we have two solutions, -3, 4, and 1, -3. All right, so the bottom line is when we graph these, when we solve by graphing, we want to find out where do they intersect, okay? All right, so now, this is another method that you use in Algebra 1, okay, but you didn't do quadratics in Algebra 1. So this is the substitution method. We have a linear and we have a quadratic equation. So here's how we're going to go about this one. Whenever you are asked to solve by substitution, the first thing you want to do is put the two equations side by side. Okay, so put the two equations side by side. Now, we need to get one of the equations by itself. Okay, one of the variables, I should say. So, as you can see on the left equation, we got this y already by itself. So what we're going to do is take this value and bring it over and plug it in for this y. So we are substituting it in for the y. Now, on this particular problem, we do have to be very careful because of that minus sign. So I'm going to put parentheses around that 3x plus 2. So because over here y is equal to 3x plus 2, this y here is now 3x plus 2. Okay, so now that turns it into a quadratic equation. So the first step is to distribute that negative sign all the way through. Now we're going to factor this. Now I'm not going to take the time to show you all the, we did the SMAG method, split the middle and group. So you guys can review that if you need to. But if we were to factor this correctly, you would end up with x minus 2 times parentheses 2x plus 1. And then we would set each one of these equal to 0. And then solve for x in each case. Okay, so at this point, we have x equals 2, we have x equals -1/2. So we're going to get two solutions. Okay, now how do we get the other, the values there, the y values? So we take these values and come back to our other equation, and we're going to replace that x value with 2. All right, so 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus the 2 is 8. So when the x is 2, the y is 8. So we're going to do the same thing with -1/2. So take 3 times -1/2. That will give you -3/2. Now because of that, I'm going to change this change the 2 to 4/2 to get that common denominator, and that's how you get 1/2. So for your two solutions here, 2, 8, so your x is 2, the y is 8, and then -1/2, 1/2, your x is -1/2, your y is +1/2. Okay, so that is how we do the substitution method. All right, so there's another method, elimination. We're not going to do that. We're just going to concentrate on graphing and substitution. All right, so here's a problem here that we want to solve by graphing. All right, so we have y equals -x squared plus 2x plus 4, and y equals -x plus 4. So what we're going to do here is bring in our friend Desmos. Now I have this already worked out, so let me move over to my computer. Okay, so as you can see, we have the two equations in there. We plug them in, and then we look at the graph, and you can see your two solutions, 0, 4, 3, 1. So Desmos comes in pretty handy to this problem. Okay, so again, our two solutions here after we graph it, 0, 4, 3, 1. Okay? All right. Now, if we had this one, so in the old days, we had to get the y by itself. Okay? Here we don't need to. We can just go into Desmos and plug this in. So I'm doing this over here on the side, and I'll bring it over here in a second. Hope everyone's doing well. All right, so Desmos is nice. Okay, so we don't have to get the y by itself. We simply plug in that first equation and plug in the second equation. Let me bring it over here to my screen. So we just plug in those two equations. Okay, and if I zoom back, you can see our two solutions, 4, 6, -1, -4. Okay, so Desmos comes in super handy. So hopefully you have Desmos on your phones. I know most of you have that already as an app. If not, you want to look for that. Desmos, D-E-S-M-O-S. Okay, so we're going to do one more solving by substitution. Okay, so let's review that. So substitution, remember our first step, and you can see both of these are quadratic, so that makes this one a little more challenging. So the first step, remember, is to put both equations side by side. Okay, put both equations side by side. All right, now we need to get one of the variables by itself. So I'm going to work on this left one. I'm going to get this y by itself, okay? Now I would not get the x by itself because that makes it much more challenging because it is quadratic. So I'm going to get the y by itself, so I'm going to add 4x, both sides. I'm going to put it in descending order. So there we have it. So y is equal to x squared plus 4x plus 1. All right, so now what I'm going to do is take this value, because that's what y is equal to, and plug it in over here. Hence the name substitution. So we're going to have 4x plus, I'm going to put it in parentheses. We don't need it here, but as you recall, we did on that last substitution problem because we had to distribute the minus sign. So just be careful. So I'm going to take the parentheses away, combine like terms. This 4x and 4x make 8x. So now, the reason we do the substitution is now everything's in terms of x. Now we will need to get the x squared over here, so we're going to add that to both sides. And we can also subtract the 1 from both sides in the same step. So with quadratic, we're bringing everything to one side. So when we clean up, we're left with 2x squared plus 8x is equal to 0. Now this one's a little easier. We can factor our GCF. Okay, factor out your GCF. Set each factor equal to 0. So x equals 0. X equals -4. So right now we have 0 something, -4 something. That's what we're looking for. All right, so that's something we get from the other equation. So I'm going to start with the x equals 0. All right, so 0 squared is 0, 4 times 0 is 0, so we're left with 1. So when x is 0, y is 1. Now use that same equation here. Now x is -4. So -4 squared plus 4 times -4 plus 1. So I replace that x and that x with -4. Now just be careful cleaning this up. This is going to give us 16 minus 16 plus 1. We end up with 1. So there's your two solutions. All right. So that was our goal today, to find the solution to a system of equations. So we saw two methods, graphing and substitution. Okay, use your Desmos for graphing and substitution is the other method. Now we got to end with the question of the day. So here is our question of the day. I am an odd number. Take away a letter and I become even. What number am I? You can email me the answer. All right. Good luck. I hope this helps, I should say. And let me know if you have any questions. Thanks. Go Cougars.